Hey guys, it's your host Julian. This week I'm sitting down with King of the Hill director Ron Rubio. We chat about how he broke into animation through Film Roman, some of his favorite moments with the crew, and what it was like to direct Grand Theft Arlen. If you haven't yet, you should check us out on Patreon. We're offering 3 tiers with a lot of fun perks. Some of those perks included in the 3 tiers are a special shout out to all the patrons, question priority, early and ad-free access to the audio and video chats, voting on our upcoming retrospectives, and so much more. We'll be releasing our next Patreon exclusive video next week. This podcast was made possible by patrons like Jacob. Thanks, Jacob, for your support. Now, let's get on to my chat with the great Ron Rubio. But Ron, thank you so much for joining me. Where do you want to start, man? Do you want to start first day? You want to start a couple first episodes? Man, dealer's choice. Where do you want to go?
Let's see. I'll tell you how I started. I guess how I got the job. Let's go with that route. So I originally moved up to LA to get into animation. Most people, I wanted to get into work for Disney, like I think most people did back in the 90s. So the goal of that was to go to a school called CalArts. I wasn't ready yet when I felt like I moved up to LA, so I took some workshop classes at a small school up in LA. And at the time, when I felt ready, I applied to CalArts, but I was doing nothing. So I was like, you know what? I hear they're hiring at Film Roman. They have you could get a Simpson test or you could get a King of the Hill test. I might as well take both of those tests. I'm not doing anything. I'll work on those while I wait to see if I get into CalArts. So I spent a lot of like a long time on a Simpson test. I'm hardcore because I'm a big Simpson fan. And then King of the Hill, I saw the test. I'll be honest with you, I just kind of looked at it. I was kind of like, oh, it's a show, and I just did it. I didn't really think about it much. I just did it. I haven't really watched the show on TV. I was like, it's a show on TV. I don't really care. And then I finally got a call from I got my letter from CalArts. It was my letter to see if I got accepted, and I opened it up, and I didn't make it, and I was sad. I was disappointed because this was my goal for a couple years. And then I remember calling my mom, and my mom being sad, crying for me, and I hung up the phone. And then literally like 5 minutes later, I get a call from Stephanie Elliott, who's the producer on King of the Hill. And she's like, oh, yeah, we have a position for you on the show King of the Hill for character layout. We could start you off as $1,000 a week. This time I was making $0. My God, 1,000! This is the most money I could possibly ever imagine making. And I was like, this is ridiculous. You could make this much money in animation? So I'm like, forget CalArts, forget that. I got a job, and that was basically my first job in the industry. It was King of the Hill, and I remember going, I have no idea what the hell character layout is. How am I gonna? Who's gonna deal? I don't know what I'm gonna do. They're hired. So they hired you. They hired me. No interview. No. Seriously, I just did a test, a character layout test that I just did drawings. I had no idea what I was doing. And that's how I got hired. And I just lucked out because at the time, this is the beginning of season 3, King of the Hill just switched to doing a format called character layout, which was something similar to the Simpsons were doing. Before that, they were doing something called like storyboard cleanup. It was a simpler style of how the show was done. So they needed to hire like 20 new artists, and that's basically the only reason why I got hired. Is I happened to turn in my test at the exact time when they were hiring 20 people. They needed to hire like 20 people at once, and I lucked out. I got a job, and the first week they had was just training, and I lucked out that Sean Cashman was there to teach us, and I can't imagine ask for a better teacher. He broke down everything, and in 1 week he just gave us a quick break down what character layout was, and what character layout is basically we have storyboard artists, and then we have back then after the phase of storyboards, that's when those comic strip panels are drawn. I know most people know what that is, and off of reading a script, we blew up those panels into full 12 field size pages, 12 field animation size paper. That's the animation size for TV, and we would do. It was almost like animating keyframes. That's what you would do. Like you would, Hank Hill was standing this side of the room. You would draw one pose there, then you draw the pose in the middle because he's walking across the way, then you draw the pose at the end. So that's, you won't do all the animation poses. So the animators could read what's going on for the animation, and that was the big process they adapted for the season 3, and that was my first job, character layout. And my first show I worked on was Paddling Peggy, I guess that was
Paddling Peggy, man.
She had the wooden paddle. That was the first episode I worked on, but it was interesting. It was kind of crazy. I kept thinking, I was 21 at the time. I was like, how are they hiring some punk kid who doesn't know what he's doing? And I remember that first year, I would get there at 9 o'clock on exactly 9 o'clock, bust my ass, work as hard as I can, take literally no lunch at all, just work through, and then 6 o'clock leave. When I would leave, I would go home and I would practice drawing these characters, because I was just like, I gotta learn how to draw these characters, because this is my first job. I don't want to get fired. And then I would go into work, though. I would notice no one else would get in at 9 o'clock. It would just be me, and then everyone would come in at like 9:30, and then they would get in at 10 o'clock, and then they would drink coffee for the first 30 minutes or so. I'm like, how are these guys getting their work done? I gotta bust my ass and work super hard, because everyone's must be so damn amazing on this job, that they don't have to come in at 9 o'clock like I do. And then, so that first, I busted my ass really, really hard that first year. And then I realized no one else knew what they were doing. We were all brand new. It's just, that's how it was. And but I think that extra motivation of me helped push me up, and got me looked at, because I ended up working my way up from a character layout artist to an assistant director, and then later on I got to direct on the show years later. But that ended up being my process. But that's kind of the start of me, how I got into the animation. And then I remember the first day. Let's go back to the first day. I'm sorry, just jumping around, but that first day. So I remember going, yeah, King of the Hill, I'm excited to be on the show, but I never really watched it. So is it that great of a show? I mean, I remember Beavis and Butthead. I'm like, it was fine, but it's not like this great animation show that everyone remembers. I mean, it's a great animation show, but not the fine-tuned Disney animation that I'm thinking I always wanted to be a part of. And then, but they showed us on our first day there. They showed us the episode. It was the explosion episode of the
the Megalomart blowing up.
Megalomart exploded. This was the season finale of season 2.
Hmm.
So it was the premiere for season 3, but it was done at the very end of season 2. That was the very first show they did full layout, and to show Fox that this is how much better the show will look if we do full layout. And that was the show they showed us. And I was in the room with we were my group of people that started that week. And I mean, the show just killed. Everyone's dying laughing. The show, I mean, it was like the funniest episodes.
Hmm.
I am mad. I was like, why am I not watching this show? This show is freaking hilarious. It was, and then from then I was like, oh, people are like, oh no, you gotta watch the smoking episode. You gotta watch the Halloween episode. You gotta watch, and I'm like, what? And then we had the library there to watch all the old episodes, and so that first year, yeah, I got in and I became a fan of the King of the Hill like almost instantly. The show was there's like, why am I not? Why I'm like, why isn't more people watching this show? This show is amazing. And uh had such great episodes. I mean, there was like, as we were working, like, oh, there's an episode where Hank's gonna get raped by a dolphin. Like, what? And then that's molested by a dolphin. You're like, what? That's an episode? You're like, yeah, that's an episode. Like, and then it just seemed like there's all this constant these ideas for episodes that are coming up. And like, everything was great, and it was just this fun. All of us were super young. We were all in our early 20s, and it was a very fun young group of people, artists, and yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the beginning of how it started. Yeah, it's hard to start. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. I don't know where's the next thing you want to go to.
That's what I'm here for, Ron. Don't worry, man. I'll lead this.
Yeah.
I'll lead us into the depths of King of the Hill, man. Because the fans know how much I appreciate the hell out of this show, and I told you how much I appreciate the hell out of this show. And one thing that I always find very interesting is those first days, because no matter what, we remember first days, first kisses, first time we saw. You got Star Wars behind you, man. So I'm pretty sure you remember the first time you ever got to see that on the big screen as a kid, man. So getting to hear that first day going into a production like Film Roman, like King of the Hill, and getting to know that almost every single story I've heard from somebody that King of the Hill was their first job, it's almost always the same. He's like, I showed up at this time, nobody was here. And it's not just a unique thing to Film Roman and King of the Hill. I did an entire deep dive for AKA Cartoons, which was Danny Antonucci's cartoon studio that they did, and they produced Ed, Edd n Eddy for Cartoon Network. Almost every single board artist, every single writer that was there, that was essentially their first job in animation. And then you go and then you look at their career, and that first show like King of the Hill, that first show like Ed, Edd n Eddy, I had a stroke there, Jesus, has just catapulted their career to heights that they weren't expecting. And all of them start the same way. It's like, oh man, if I have to get here at 9 and I see everybody else palling around till 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock, like, fuck, I got to catch up to them, because whatever they're doing must be that much better than what I'm doing. And I find so many similarities between what you guys do for a living and what I do for a living as cooking, right? So you would say you would go home and then you would just try to bang out as many characters as you could, try to perfect your craft. I do the same thing. Whenever I go home and I want to do something new at work, I'm workshopping it here at home, because I've got like 5 test subjects here. I have my friends come over, my family's here. So if I'm doing a new bread, I want them to try it, because if I can knock it out here with the lack of equipment that I have in comparison to a restaurant, I was like, well, fuck, dude, it's going to be that much better. So to know that you guys do the same thing, you take your work home with you, but the whole goal is to be better at your craft by the end of the day. I find that extremely fascinating. I find it extremely rewarding. I have to imagine you would too.
Yeah. I mean, those characters were hard to draw. That's another reason why. That first
What are some
year,
of those hard characters? Who was
I
the
think
hardest for you to slip into?
so the first year I was there, I thought Bobby Hill was the hardest character to draw. Now
Really?
I think I think he's the easiest character for me to draw because I think that if you look at the early Bobby drawings, there were just so many different styles of how people drew him, and it was kind of he looked one way and he looked stuff in the model sheets like another, and also his acting style. If you read the acting manual how to act these characters, it was like Bobby is a I forgot the word it used. He's deadpan and very because that's how he was in an earlier show where he didn't have much expression. He was very and that's not what he became at all in the show. He was out there. So he became this fun character to draw. And but I remember that first year him and actually most of the characters were like impossible to draw for me. And like a lot of people just relied on tracing them, and I was like, no, I gotta learn how to draw all these damn characters. And I remember Martin Archer was the character layout supervisor at the time, said something to me, and he's like, and he said it to a group of people, so it wasn't just to me. He was just like, yeah, these characters are hard to draw, and it takes about one good year before you'll feel comfortable drawing. And after that, I was just like, okay, I'm not stressed over it. I mean, I'm gonna do my best, but I mean, I can't if it's that hard to draw. I mean, like that's because it was difficult at first, and then yeah, Bobby became my favorite character to draw at one point. Bobby and Hank, but Hank's top of the head was weird at first to start realizing how it worked, and then how it slants, so when he looks down it's still kind of flat, and there's this weird Peggy's hair was annoying because you have to draw it one way. You couldn't just mirror the drawing later on. If you messed up, you couldn't just flop it. You had to redraw her hair properly. I always hated drawing Boomhauer for some reason because
you remember why?
he just had a weird shape to his face that if you drew it off, it just looked wrong. At least for me, it did. But and the Conan men, they were hard to draw. I don't know what was hard about them, but they just were hard to draw. And I don't know why. It was a hard struggle to draw Conan men. But I lucked out that I got to draw most of the characters. I feel sad I never got to draw. Is it Jimmy Witcher? Is that the character's name?
Yeah.
I never got to draw him. That was kind of sad. But other than that, I got to draw pretty much all the main characters, and
Who was the easiest to slip into that first year?
Easiest to slip into Luan. I loved drawing Luan. Yeah. I don't know what it was about Luan. It's just I think I drew her a bit more Disney-like than maybe everyone else did. That's probably why I like drawing her. I always like to draw girls, and then Luan just was something just nice and fun to draw, and so every time I got to draw her, I was happy. But yeah, and then Hank, you just kind of have to because he's the main character, and like drawing him so much that you have to learn how to draw Hank really fast, and then that was something that happened. But I think Martin was right. It took me about a good year, and then that following year, everything was a bit more comfortable drawing those characters. But
you remember what that first year felt like?
Huh?
You remember what that first year felt like? Yeah, what did it feel like? Do you remember?
I mean, it felt like, so I was still kind of new to the industry, so, and at that point, King of the Hill was just getting super huge. That season 2 was crazy big. It did so well that they were planning to move it to Tuesday nights. You probably don't remember this because at the time it was originally on Sunday nights right after The Simpsons, and then that 70s show replaced it, and they moved us. They wanted to create this Tuesday night show, so they were putting a lot of money into advertising King of the Hill, And then I remember our premiere party for that year was at like House of Blues, and I never been to like some Hollywood type of premiere party, and it was at House of Blues. I'm like, I felt like I was part of Hollywood for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is crazy. Again, this huge party. I mean, and there's even the actors are there. All the stuff, a lot of stars, and it was just like it was just crazy that first year. I'm like, the excitement to be part of a show that was